G'day, welcome to a new series entitled The Pier Review. In years gone by, the credibility of science was underpinned by the concept of peer reviewing. When a scientist wanted an article published, the journal would seek out other scientists with expertise in that field who would review it and validate the findings. But peer reviewing has been criticised in recent years due to scientists and journals sending their articles out to other scientists who not only work in the same field, but have the same views, attitudes, and dare I say, ideologies as the scientist who wrote the paper, leading to a concept known as normative science.
So, welcome to this session on conflicts of interest and normative science. Is it a problem in environmental science? Spoiler alert, yeah.
So while the traditional scientific approach is to start with a hypothesis and then test it to prove or disprove whether it might be true, normative science is information that's developed, presented or interpreted based on an assumed, usually unstated preference for a particular policy or class of policy choices. In other words, they're trying to prove an opinion that they already have, as opposed to going out and trying to find out the actual facts and solutions. So if normative science has reduced the credibility of peer reviewing, then surely any mug standing on a pier can review some science. And that's what this series is going to be all about. So how does normative science work for you and me? Well, let's conduct a peer review. On the 24th of October 2024, a full-page advertisement appeared in Australian newspapers. The advertisement was an open letter on behalf of the Australia Institute, which began, "We, the undersigned scientists, ask you to honour your pledge of no new extinctions by taking urgent action to prevent the extinction of the Maugean Skate, found only in Macquarie Harbour in Tasmania." The letter goes on to claim that, quote, "Your department's Threatened Species Scientific Committee has, on the basis of the best available information, assessed the impact of salmonid aquaculture as catastrophic to the skate." Now, the word catastrophic actually appears 8 times in the conservation advice. Salmonid aquaculture is catastrophic. Reduced water quality due to hydroelectric damming, catastrophic. Climate change, the consequence could be considered catastrophic if considered with the cumulative impacts of other threats. But if you consider the fact that the Maugean Skate was originally found in Bathurst Harbour and is no longer found there, then surely climate change, warming water conditions, must be up there. But this open letter apparently ignores 2 out of the 3 factors causing catastrophic impact to the skate and focuses only on one, salmon aquaculture. So, who has written this letter? Well, it's under the banner of the Australia Institute, which is a green left-leaning research institute which acts more like a lobby group and activist group at times. But it's signed by 32 scientists who say, and I quote, "Combined, we have many years of scientific investigation and leadership in Australia and overseas. Our research, teaching and management experience make us conclude that a nation with strong aspirations for a sustainable blue economy cannot support industries that are the primary contributors to the extinction of a species. So let's look at that research by conducting a peer review of each of those scientists and their work. Stuart Frusher is an expert on rock lobster and climate change. Andrew Wright is the Executive Secretary of the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, not actually a scientist. Joe Adelstein is involved with mooring recoveries for CSIRO and is not a published scientist. Ian Allison, his area of expertise is science history and Antarctic ice sheets. Stephen Battagline, he does have expertise in Atlantic salmon aquaculture, dating back some years, but also in various other marine fish. Johan Bell, expertise in fisheries policy and management, food security, specifically around tuna. Laurel Bossy is an eco-philosopher with specialising in bioethics and blue ecofeminism. Cullum Brown, expertise in fish cognition and behaviour. Maria Byrne, her area of expertise is environmental stresses on marine species, particularly echinoderms, those are sea urchins and other related organisms. Rob Campbell is expert in wild fishery stocks. Andrew Constable is involved with Antarctic ecosystems. Louise Cherry is an environmental management consultant, not a published scientist, and a known opponent to aquaculture, salmon farming. John Church, his area of expertise is climate change effect on the marine environment. Don Driscoll is working in tropical terrestrial ecology. Jamie Graham Blair is a casual employee of UTAS in sociology and criminology, with studying and human impacts of climate change. Now, it's interesting that Dr. Jamie Graham Blair is listed as the Pakana biocultural conservationist and marine ecologist, Pakana being the Aboriginal people of Tasmania, and if he's going to be their Aboriginal representative, then at least they could have acknowledged him by putting him in bold like all of the whiteys. Now, the next one, Peter Kine, is quite interesting. Peter Kine works with threatened species, specifically sharks and rays, and he wrote the Australian Action Plan for Sharks and Rays, which does actually mention the Maugean Skate. And this is the relevant extract from the action plan, saying the Maugean Skate has a restricted range in Macquarie and Bathurst harbours. One location, Macquarie Harbour, is facing increasing human activity, which is projected to lead to a decrease in the extent of occurrence. And furthermore, the species is also regularly caught by recreational and commercial gill netting in Macquarie Harbour. And the second subpopulation at Bathurst Harbour has not been verified in 20 years, despite dedicated surveys, and may be locally extinct. So Kine knows that salmon farming is not the only impact on the Maugean Skate, by mentioning gill netting and other pollution, and he also knows that it has gone extinct in Bathurst Harbour, where there is virtually no human presence whatsoever, and yet signs an open letter calling for the closing down of salmon farming because it's the #1 cause of the extinction of the skate. The next scientist to sign the open letter is Jeff Lice, whose experience is in fish larvae. And the next one, Dr. Fee Locke, is also quite interesting. Dr. Locke is the Non-Executive Director of Sharks and Rays Australia. More about them later. Dr. Locke gained her PhD in chemistry in how components in cone snail venom could be used in new medications. She then went on to develop anti-counterfeiting devices for polymer banknotes. After that, set up the research and development function for Australia's paint industry research startup. So she's got quite varied expertise, but none in aquaculture or, funnily enough, in sharks and rays. And our next scientist is Naima Andrea Lopez, who's just completed a PhD quite recently, specialising in hammerhead sharks. Then we have Helene Marsh, who is involved with threatened species and dugong conservation. Jonathan Mitchell, he works in shark behaviour. And then we come to Barbara Novak. Now, Barbara Novak is an expert in aquaculture and marine fish and environment, but recently has become an opponent of aquaculture. So the next one after Barbara is John Pandolfi, whose area is paleoecology and coral reefs. And in particular, he has recently studied nitrogen loading resulting from major floods and sediment resuspension to a large coastal embayment. So should have an awareness of all the biological feeds into Macquarie Harbour impacting upon oxygenation. Next up we have Hugh Possingham, who has done a lot of conservation research, but it's very general, not particularly specific. Then I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this properly, Vincent Raoul, whose area of expertise is ecology, fisheries management and sharks and rays. Ewan Ritchie, who has worked in wildlife ecology of Australian native mammals. Tony Smith, whose research is in fish population dynamics and management. Killian Stayfest. Now, Killian did at least co-author some papers on gummy and school sharks with Jason Semmons from IMAS, who wrote the paper on the Maugean Skate. And has also, Killian's written a paper on the response of Atlantic salmon to dissolved oxygen extremes, so he has expertise in aquaculture. But he does work in Canada with the David Suzuki Foundation and with Alexandra Morton as a paid activist opposing salmon farming. And next up we have the Tasmanian Independent Science Council. Oh well, don't need to say anything more about them. Refer to the previous video about independent. And next we have Adriana Verges, whose area of expertise is climate change impact on marine environments. Followed by Nerida Wilson, whose work is with Antarctic marine invertebrates. And Tony Warby, whose work has also been involved in the Antarctic, his work with Antarctic sea ice. And then finally we come to Barbara Veringer. Now, Barbara Veringer is a director of Sharks and Rays Australia. And Sharks and Rays Australia has 5 aims, 4 about sawfish, and the 5th is we also work with other sharks and rays. But bizarrely, when you do a search for that specific one, Maugean Skate, you get no results. So of the 32 scientists who signed the letter, 3 of them are not actual scientists, 5 of them are not marine scientists, 3 of them have got expertise in sharks and rays, but only 1 of them has any even passing knowledge of the Maugean Skate. And even he conveniently puts aside the other risks to the skate that he identified, including gillnet fishing. And only 3 of them have any expertise in Atlantic salmon aquaculture. 4 of them do have experience in climate change research, but conveniently put that aside and eliminate that as a risk to the Maugean Skate, instead focusing all blame on salmon aquaculture. So in the case of these scientists, they're not speaking with any expertise on the issue at all. None of them have any research expertise on the Maugean Skate, and only 3 of these with research expertise in aquaculture, and with one of them being a paid anti-salmon farming activist from Canada, and another one also known for her anti-salmon farming attitudes. No, they're not experts, just people with opinions, no more valid than yours or mine. Hence the need for this peer review. But that's not the point about open letters. I mean, if this was simply a letter to the Minister for Environment, why publish it in the newspaper? Because while they do want to change the minister's mind, above all, they actually want to change your opinion so that you believe the point that they're trying to get across by conning you into believing that they actually know what they're talking about, when in fact they do not. And we wonder why people don't trust the science anymore. Because these charlatans, who are scientists, but who are actually pretending to know about this issue when they don't, they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Look, I never thought I'd actually say this, but what I want you to do is go and do your own research. In fact, what I want you to do is check out the actual research from the IMAS researchers, David Moreno and Jason Simmons, the actual experts on the Maugean Skate. And I'll put a link to that in the description below. So, if you like this peer review, please click like, please subscribe, and hit me up in the comments section below. And stay tuned for the next video in this series, where we do a peer review of the work of one of the scientists who signed the open letter. Thanks for watching.